All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships podcast. And today I am here with my friend John Ruhlin. John, welcome, man. So awesome to have you today.
Took us like a year to get this scheduled, Kevin, and finally, man, we were able to pull it off. So
That's
thanks.
right.
My honor to be here, man.
Well, sometimes patience works out. and so, but yes,
Amen.
here we are, and in perfect timing. And I'll tell you, I have really been looking forward to this because you and I know we were just talking right before we hit the record button. You and I first met about 8-9 years ago at one of Jason Gaynard's MMT Mastermind Talks events. I think it was like the second or third one that he'd done.
Yeah.
And he's done a lot more now. In fact, at the time we're recording this, he just finished one down in Costa Rica. And so it could be said that you and I met through Jason. And of course, I've known Jason since before MMT was ever even a thing.
Really?
And I met him originally in Genius Network years ago, and he wasn't even doing MMT when I first met Jason and stuff. And so
wow.
I am, I can totally remember that sitting outside at the hotel there talking with John Corcoran, and then you came up, and I think John introduced us, and we've been friends ever since. And
yeah, John's a great connector in his own right. He's always looking out for people, and he went out of his way to make sure that we got connected.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's amazing to look back, at like 8-9 years ago and look at all that has happened since then. And I'll tell you, because like you mentioned, John, Giftology, the book, wasn't even a thing at that point in time, And the work that you do now, which, man, I'll tell you, I see these videos of the stuff that you do, and it's like, it's just, it is so moving, it's such an emotional experience watching those videos and seeing how people respond to just this overwhelming appreciation, and it's the work you do is just absolutely amazing. And so, I've been looking forward to this. And so I will stop talking. I want to turn it over to you to just share, a little bit about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you get to do, and just kind of let everybody, who is John Ruhlin and what is John all about?
Yeah. Well, I would say that sometimes people, like I just had a call with somebody, big $4 billion company, and they're like, he's like one of the executives. He's like, I hate gifts. He's like, I hate the gifting stuff. And I said, I do too. And you could tell it caught him off guard. He's like, but you wrote the book Giftology. I'm like, the gift in most people's minds, swag, trinkets, promotional items, nobody cares. And I don't either, because that doesn't really connect with people at a heart level. Like you never go to your best friend's wedding or on the Tiffany's vase, compliments of Remax or compliments of Mastermind Talks. Like that'd be the cheesiest thing in the world. But we do that in business and we think we're marketing or we're branding. And so the core of the book isn't really a gifting book. The agency that we've had for 22 years is not really a gifting agency. It's really a relationship agency, which can sound woo-woo or a little bit analogous. Like, what do you mean? It's like, well, every business rises and falls on the quality of relationships. That's why you have $1 Million Relationship and $1 Million Podcast. It's people that make, whether you're selling widgets or technology. And most people, when they're entertaining people, like, Jason didn't have his event at like McDonald's at the Motel 6. He did it at a world-class Ojai or Pebble Beach or crazy places, right? It's always level 10. But most people, most leaders struggle with how to translate that into a tangible physical world. So they do their dinners, their conferences, their summits, their masterminds at a world-class resort, at a world-class place, and spend tens of thousands of dollars per person. And then they give them a sweatshirt with their logo on it for $100. It's not congruent. And so what I learned from my original mentor, Paul, who was this rainmaking referral machine law firm owner, was if you can show up for people powerfully, whether that's experientially or with a gift or the handwritten note or with your time showing up to a funeral or a wedding or whatever, like if you can love on people in a powerful way, all the things we want to come out of business outcomes, deals, access, retention, loyalty, referrals, All of those things come as a direct result of how powerfully we show up for relationships. And so really what giftology is really just a methodology of, if you're going to love on somebody and say gratitude matters, then take action and do it at the same level you do anything else in your business. And so that's where we get people that were like, their budget was an Amazon gift card for $50 or a $200 fruit basket with some wine in it. And all of a sudden, like, we're helping people give $50,000 art pieces to Gary Vaynerchuk, which sounds insane. But if you wanted to hire Gary as a sales rep for your brand for a year, he would charge you millions of dollars and he'd still turn you down. But if you loved on somebody with 50 grand and you got them in your corner for the next 10 years, $5,000 a year to get Gary Vaynerchuk as a sales rep is pretty dang cheap.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what we're talking about is, how do you love on people that inspires them, doesn't bribe them, doesn't manipulate them, there's no strings attached, but how do you show up for people powerfully and do that for one person, for 100 people, for your employees, for your clients? And that's really what our agency does, is we help people quarterback and think about all of their relationships and then actually invest dollars into those relationships so that it moves the ball forward in a way that doesn't feel manipulative. It doesn't feel disingenuine. It doesn't feel like there's strings attached, because that ruins it. So That's giftology in a nutshell.
Yeah. I really love that. And the whole thing that you reiterated several times there was the whole no strings attached. We're not giving to get. And that
it's hard.
What's that?
It's very difficult to it's easy to say, it's difficult to do.
Yeah.
But we know if you give your wife a nice piece of jewelry and then expect something that night, was it a gift? No, it was a give to get.
Yeah.
But we know if we love on our relationships, open palms, like that's what Vaynerchuk talked about with his jab, 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 right hook, was give, give, give. And then you earn the right to ask, but you don't earn the right to expect.
Yeah.
And it's the expectations that ruin things. I gave you that thing, now you better give me something back. No, we want a profit. We want referrals. We want all that. And so we know that if we take somebody out to a nice dinner in Vegas, maybe they'll return our phone call, but there's no guarantees.
That's right.
But you don't hang it over somebody's head. Hey, I bought you $1,000 dinner in Vegas. Now you better send me referrals. That nobody does that. But we do that in business and we don't realize what we're communicating. And so, there's a big difference between an incentive and a gift. People are like, well, if you do this $1 million thing for me, then I'll take you to Africa. That's not a gift. That's an incentive. That's a carrot and stick. If you give something with your logo on it, that's not a gift. That's a promotional item. Yeah. So I think a lot of people have confused. They put it all in the same sandbox, all in the same bucket. And they're like, John, I spent this much money on it. It didn't work. And I'm like, did you do giftology? You followed the recipe? And they're like, well, I did giftology-ish. I'm like, don't expect to get, bread if you don't put yeast in the recipe.
Yeah.
And don't expect to get relationships that refer you deal flow if you have a sucky business. Like, gifts won't save you.
Yeah.
If you're manipulative, that won't save you. So our whole process, we give away, because if somebody has 1 or 2 relationships to take care of, they don't need an agency. They can go do it on their own. The difficulty is when you have dozens or hundreds or thousands of relationships that you need to take care of that are really valuable. And that's where people cut corners. So your audience can go, if they go to Giftology System, they can download whether we're taking a solopreneur through this or the Chicago Cubs, who are a client. There's a whole process, a methodology, a recipe that, your audience can go steal our whole playbook. They don't even have to go buy the book. You go to Giftology System, download the entire playbook. And it really just walks people through systematically how to think about relationship building and driving towards these revenue goals and referral goals and outcomes. But there's a plan and a process, just like you have a marketing plan or an operation plan or a financial plan or a workout plan. Like, there are steps to take. And if you don't take the steps, don't expect to get the results.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing all that. You and I are like so on the same page and in alignment when it comes to values, core values, and how we treat people, and so now that we've got a little bit of context set, I'm gonna shift gears and I'll reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons?
Oh, there's no question. I mean, I grew up milking goats on a farm in a town of 300 people, so I did not have access to wealth or affluence or country clubs or pro sports teams. Like, you know, and I think a lot of people that grow up in the Midwest or maybe grow up poor, it always comes down to typically somebody opening the door or cracking the door for them to get into the right room or rooms. And I think the beautiful thing now is there's virtual groups and masterminds, and you know, you're hosting gatherings that sometimes it's like, hey, if you make a donation to this cause for $500 or $1,000, you get into the room with all these people. I don't know about you, but that didn't exist. I didn't know about those things, you know, 20 years ago when I was starting the business and I was in college. One of my first mentors, Paul, with the law firm owner, I mean, it was my girlfriend's dad. I kind of got lucky to date the right girl in college, and her dad was like, took me under his wing, and he was the guy that would like find deals on noodles and buy a semi load and drop 40 grand on noodles and get everybody at church the next Sunday would walk away with a year's supply of noodles. And I saw Paul, I saw how he showed up for people. And the kicker was I was interning with Cutco Knife, the company, Cutco Knives, which is a weird thing to pitch your girlfriend's dad. I pitched him the knives, hoping he'd maybe buy a set. And he not only bought a set for his 3 unmarried daughters, he came back to me and said, John, I want to help you hit your goals, but these knives are amazing. They last forever. So I pitched him the $200-$300 pocket knives and hunting knives, and he changed my life forever. He bought 100 of the paring knives, which I thought was weird. A kitchen tool, you know, being bought for a bunch of CEO dudes. And I said, why, Paul? And he said, John, the reason I have more referrals and deal flow and access, I figured out if you take care of the family in business, not the golf, not the bourbon, not the hunting trips, the family, everything else in business takes care of itself. So he taught me how to think about relationship building and taking care of what I call the inner circle now. And the kicker was he spent all this money on these gifts, and then he would give them to me. He'd give me the knives he bought for hundreds of dollars a piece and say, John, go give this to the owner of this lumber company or the owner of this insurance company or the owner of this financial advisor firm. Whether they buy or not, let them know Paul wants them to have a piece. He gave me his social capital. He gave me his belief, and then he transferred the belief to that person because the other person's getting like a $200-$300 gift, and they're like, Paul thinks this is amazing. And so he took this country bumpkin farm kid, gave him the confidence, connected the dots, opened the doors, gave him belief. Like I've tried to give him credit. He's like, John, you did all the work. I'm like, no, like you opened the door, you gave me the belief. Nobody believed in me. You believed in me. You like all these things. So, you know, that's why I dropped out of med school, was to pursue the entrepreneur thing. Cause I was like, man, Paul understands relationship building in a super deep level. So he was a clutch person. Cameron Harold, who I did the Brooks Brothers, $7,000 Brooks Brothers experience, you know, he's produced 50x off of the 25 grand I invested in that relationship. So you talk about 7-figure relationship. Cameron, every CEO client that he has, like when I was begging to speak for free, he got me my first 10, 20, $30,000 speaking gigs. Wow. Was because Cameron would say, I'm double booked, but you got to book John Ruhlin. And everybody would be like, who's John Ruhlin? And he'd be like, just trust me. So he became my sales agent. Like, wow. So everything I have in my life, I can't really take credit for any of it. It's always come down to the right person. Now, you know, I guess I walked through the doors, but like realistically, I could list off dozens of people that believed in me, opened the door to the pro sports world, opened the door to the builder world. Like I have this long list of people I have to honor and send lots of love to, because I mean, it's all come down to the human to human connection for me, and all the 7-figure relationships all the 7-figure deals I have were not me. They were always people selling on my behalf.
Yeah. So, okay. So you've, you know, talked about Paul, who was your girlfriend's dad, and what an impact he had on your life. I want to make sure, because here's what I'm going to do, John, is I'm going to make sure that you get the recording of this, because a lot of people that I've interviewed have said, you know, Kev, I want to share the recording of our interview with some of the people that I talked about. And I always think that is so awesome when they do that. And so I just want to make sure, the other people that you've mentioned that, you know, that you get an opportunity to honor them too and stuff, in case, you know, we do want to share this with them. I just want to make sure we get them covered too and stuff, you know, and
Yeah,
give credit where credit is due. So
100%, 100%. Yeah, Paul is always at the top of the list. Cameron, I mean, you know, Ruby Newell, who is like in the pro sports world, my first NBA client came because she sent knives to the CEO of the Orlando Magic. Like Rick Lasser at the Miami Dolphins was my first NFL client. He opened up doors at for all the pro sports teams at ALSD, like home builder world, Tom Winters. Like I could just go down the list and think of every vertical I'm in. Every, you know, Joey Coleman made the introduction to Jason Gaynor, you know, and opened up. He was Jason, that was the first person before he had MMT. He hired me when he was at EO. One of my first speaking gigs was him.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun, at least for me, it's such a fun thing. And I think a lot of people don't do that, right? They say they feel gratitude. And I'm like, if you think about where you're at in business, if you just wrote down 3 people every day that you're grateful for that helped you get to the dance, wherever you're at, you know, like, and that was one of my original mentors and one of my best friends, John Kane, always said, don't forget who got you on Broadway. I think a lot of times people forget the teachers, the professors, the coaches, the early clients, the bank, the person who opens the door early on when you're starting the business, or floats you your first loan, or refers you your first big deal. Like most of the time we have dozens or hundreds or thousands of people that we probably need to go in reverse, and with a handwritten note or a video or a heart bomb gift or something, and say, you know, the reason I have this $5 million company or this $2 million company or this $200 million company was because of your belief or your referral or your first, you know, you took a chance on me as a client.
Yeah.
Like I think there's a lot of gratitude that people are like, well, I feel the gratitude. And I'm like, well, that's cool. But have you ever really fully expressed it and done something with action to those people? And I can assure you that most people are not like, man, I just feel like people appreciate me too much. Like most people are walking around feeling like, now I know I've had this moment where I'm like, gosh, I open up all these doors and do all these things. And sometimes I'm just like, do they even remember or acknowledge it or notice? You know, like, not that you're doing it for that, but as humans, like we all crave that appreciation or gratitude.
That's
or,
right. That's
you
right.
know, or, hey, like I made you $2 million. Like a referral fee wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for you to say thank you, right? Like, but I think a lot of times people are on to the next thing and the next thing, and we forget to go and review our life. And a lot of us have been in business for, you know, decades.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of relationships there that are underappreciated.
You know, you bring up such a huge point there with that, because, you know, no matter, you know, how successful somebody is, no matter how big of a business they run, no matter how great things might look from the outside looking in, there is not a person on the face of this earth that gets too much appreciation. Every one of us craves more appreciation. And it is what, you know, I learned this 11 years ago now from my, who's become a great friend, Jesse Elder, over the years. But you know, he
awesome.
first shared this whole concept of active appreciation with me 11 years ago. And as soon as I heard it from him, I immediately, in fact, that afternoon, I remember we were sitting at a coffee shop in San Antonio. And when he shared this with me, I was like, my gosh, I was like, I want to start doing it right now. And he's like, well, do it. And I sat right there and started sending messages to people, that contacts I had on my phone, and just letting them know, you know, one thing that I genuinely appreciate about him. And I sat there right then and there and sent like 15 messages to people. And I don't know how long it took me, maybe 30, 40 minutes to do that, you know. But when the messages start coming back in, and what transpired from that, like I said, I was totally hooked. I was like, man, I am going to do this on a regular basis. And I have been doing it ever since. Like, it's a daily thing that I just, not a day goes by where, I mean, I don't even have to think about it anymore, because it's just become part and parcel of just who I am and who I want to show up as, that I want to be the guy who is appreciating others and just helping, because, you know, we never know where somebody is at. And what you said, John, before we started recording, is that at any given time, people are going into a period of turmoil and chaos and challenge in their life. They're in the middle of it, or they're coming out of it. And we never know where somebody's at. And our little message, just a little teeny, it could be a text message, a Facebook message, an audio message, whatever. That little message could be just the thing that totally makes their day and just makes such an impact. And that has happened definitely many times over the last 11 years, you know.
No, I mean, I think it's, and I think the more personal you can make it, the more specific you can make it, the more, you know, like, to me, like, a text message is one level, and audio, hearing somebody's voice, is the next level, and then, like, seeing a video is next level, handwritten note, like, there's different levels of active appreciation, right? And so I think the more you can get, you know, into the, where it's just part of your routine, you know, whether it's one person or three people, or, you know, 3 minutes, it sort of talks about it, like, send three messages, text, whatever. I like to try to take it, you know, one level deeper than what most people take it, just because I want to stand out. And I want it to land, right? I want people to be like, dang, I'm in the valley right now, and, you know, John's thinking about me, and not just thinking about me, but he really, like, sees this in me, or acknowledges this thing that transpired 5 years ago that I thought maybe he forgot about, or whatever. So the more specific and deep you can be with it, the more powerful it is. And it's one of the best habits I think you can create. And if you're into relationship building, which, you know, if you're not, you should be.
You absolutely should be. I mean, especially if you're an entrepreneur, a founder, a CEO, I mean, my personal belief is that relationships are the most valuable asset we possess as entrepreneurs. And if you're not into relationship building, yes, I agree. You should definitely get into it. So, even if you're an introvert, you can still be into relationship building, you know.
Well, I am an introvert. What's funny is I play an extrovert on stage, but I'm more apt to hang out with one person or by myself. Like, when I go on stage and speak, I typically will go back and grab a bourbon or a cigar or watch ESPN or whatever. Like, I pour, it's a pour out process. So the reason I got into doing the gifts, frankly, my love language is words of affirmation.
Okay.
And when I would give a gift, I didn't have to be the life of the party. If I gave a great gift, I would get the words of affirmation back, and the person would dialogue with me then. So me being naturally introverted made me naturally gravitate towards, because I could send, you know, or help a client send a gift to 200 people in 200 cities. I didn't have to go to be the life of the party at the event. I didn't have to go work a room. I could hit people and then they would be responding to me. But I mean, the same thing with, like, active appreciation. Like, you don't have to be an extrovert to handwrite a really thoughtful note.
No,
you don't have to be an extrovert even to send a video, frankly. Like, there's no audience.
That's right.
So, like, people that are introverted, I think, you know, they can use the excuse, well, that's just not me. And it's like, no, like, you just use the tools of appreciation differently than maybe being, you know, actively on stage somewhere or whatever else. Like, I think it can be an excuse to say, well, that's not me, I'm not a relationship builder. Like, every business rises and falls on relation, even if it's not a business. Like, show me an organization, a church, a school. It comes down to the ability to connect with people, and really leadership is persuasion, right? It's getting in alignment with, like, people taking action and what's in, you know, everybody's best interest. Like, that still comes down to, like, leadership and persuasion and sales and relationship building. So even if you're introverted like me, there's no excuse.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, John, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation today, to honor some people that have had such a profound impact on your life and on your business. And any resources that you have for anybody listening to this going, man, I really like that John Ruhlin guy. I love the way he shows up. I love his energy. How can they find out more about what you guys got going on and how you might be able to help them?
Yeah, but I mean, our main website, to apply if you want somebody to help do, gratitude and help people to build a relationship plan and actually like send the things and handwrite the notes and all that, like what we do on a day-to-day basis for small, $2 million companies and large $2 billion companies. It's all just, it comes down to having a plan and building it out. Giftology group is where you would go learn and then also apply to see if it's a fit on both sides. But more than anything, I mean, the free resource of the whole playbook, like there's no like Giftology 2.0 that we like keep in a vault. And like there's no secrets, right? Like our whole playbook is out there. The book is obviously on Amazon and we walk through it a little bit more in detail there. But to me, I get excited about not just people hiring our firm to do it for them. I get excited when even college kids take the principles and go like leverage it to their professors, or they go do it on their own. They don't need an agency to build deeper relationships. Like you just have to be thoughtful, intentional, and like go take action on it. So for me, I'm trying to get 1 million people out there to take action on, that active appreciation, that active gratitude. And if that happens, the trickle down effect is really, really powerful, right?
That's right.
Better relationships, more profit, more opportunity, like good things happen. So that's really my main goal.
Absolutely. Well, any last thing you want to share before we call it a wrap, John?
No, man, I would just say, it can get overwhelming. Start somewhere, if you have a gratitude journal or whatever else, or if you have some sort of morning practice, miracle morning, like just start writing down the people that have helped you get where you're at right now. And then take one person a day and go do the most that you can do to show gratitude and appreciation. It doesn't have to be $50,000 art pieces. It might be a $5 piece of stationery that you write a handwritten note on or whatever, but go do it. And then I challenge people, go do this for 3 years and come back and say it wasn't worth it, that it didn't come back 100x.
Yeah.
Like don't do it for 3 days, do it once a day for the next 3 years and say it wasn't like one of the best things that you've ever done. I've never had anybody come back in 22 years and said, yeah, that gratitude and active appreciation thing was a waste of time. I want my money back.
Yeah, right. Well,
not how God's wired the world, man.
Yes. Yeah. Well, once again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. Really appreciate it. And I know that anybody that gets the opportunity to listen in on this is definitely going to be inspired to create some more, intentional focus and create more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own lives. So thank you again, John.
Thanks, Kevin.